and welcome to GTV UK News. This is Dr. Ming from London. Today is Wednesday, 17th February 2021. Over the past week, we have seen new events unfolding domestically, regionally, and globally, as well as new policies involving bilateral and multilateral players. How do these events and policies affect the Chinese Communist Party CCP regime and its relations with other countries? We invite Mr. Stephen K. Bannon to continue to inspire us with his answers. Hello, Mr. Bannon.
Hello, Dr. Ming. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for joining us. So first question is from Daniel. Daniel, please.
And happy Chinese New Year, Mr. Bannon. It's Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, my question is, in days after Biden's telephone conversation with Xi during Chinese Lunar New Year, he had excused the CCP's genocide in Xinjiang as a cultural norm. How do you feel? Thank you.
Daniel, it's a great question. I think people today in the United States are outraged after the town hall last night. But I want to go back for a second for your audience, because I know your audience is very sophisticated and follows us very closely. I want to go back to the actual call itself. You know, Joe Biden, who hasn't been taking a lot of calls from foreign leaders. Remember, a lot of this now we know is being done by Kamala Harris. If you go to National Pulse, Raheem Kassam has a big story up about this. Also today on LifeSite News, I would have everybody in your audience on the diaspora go to see Steve Mosher. Stephen Mosher is one of the best writers here in the United States about the CCP. He actually has another article about Kamala Harris actually making phone calls to President Macron in France and other world leaders. Biden takes 2 hours with Xi. The readout that came was very nebulous, and particularly said he did push back and talk about human rights, but it was very no definition. But particularly on the CCP virus, and particularly what's going on in Wuhan with WHO, not one mention of the Wuhan virus, not one mention of the Wuhan lab, not one mention of the investigation by WHO, not one mention of the Chinese Communist Party not giving over the raw data. They basically said they're going to work together on climate change and COVID-19 to get solutions. So very generalized kind of happy talk. I think a lot of people here that are China hands, a lot of people that are, are just not even the anti-CCP crowd like myself and others that support the new federal state of China, the whistleblower movement, Miles Guo, but really people that are pretty middle of the road. I think we're very disturbed by this 2-hour conversation and exactly what he's talking about as far as the reset goes for the CCP. Then last night, what I found most disturbing, and I think your audience should find most disturbing, is he almost used the exact phraseology of how the CCP talks about the Uyghurs. And so I think the performance last night was very disturbing. There's a lot of people up on Twitter, criticizing it. Scott Adams, the great cartoonist, has been all over Biden this morning. This is going to be a big story. After I get off here, our show is going to cover this a lot today. A lot of people are talking about it. It's the reason I was late today. This is something that's a very big deal. And I got to tell you, the start of the relationship between Biden's administration and the CCP, it's just not going to be accepted by the majority of the American people. Majority of the American people want a confrontation with the CCP.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bannon. Yeah. And next from Castle. Castle, please.
Hello there. And I bring a very hot topic this week, which is Republican Congressman Michael Wiles introduced a bill to boycott Beijing Winter Olympics of 2022 due to the CCP's genocide in Xinjiang. And what is your attitude on this issue?
I'm 100% for the boycott. In fact, it's something that we're going to pick up here starting next week to talk about that. You know, we don't want to hurt the Chinese people, right, by not having the Winter Olympics there. We understand it's a great honor for the Chinese people, but I think particularly today, and I just don't think it's just about the Uyghurs. Although we declared, Pompeo declared the CCP a genocidal regime about its handling of the Uyghurs. I think that the 2022 Winter Olympics ought to be canceled for much more reasons than that. And I think particularly the suppression of the Chinese people and their handling of the CCP virus. Until we get, Biden said last night, think about it, he said, this is not going to be really resolved in the United States until at least Christmas of this year. That will mean it's 2 years in the United States and in Europe that we basically had our economy destroyed, people killed because of what came out of the Wuhan lab. It's just not acceptable. And it's certainly not acceptable for Beijing to, until they come clean with what happened in the Wuhan lab, what type of biological weapons program they have, what was the PLA's involvement, why didn't they try to get to the world and tell the world the truth, why they've been covering this up. I mean, Miles Guo, they call crazy Miles Guo. Miles Guo has been absolutely right on this from the beginning, and Dr. Li Mingyan, who is the War Room 2020 Woman of the Year. She's been 100% correct on this. And until that gets resolved, there shouldn't be any discussions of an Olympics. And it would hurt me to know that some of the Chinese people that maybe have jobs doing this would be hurt. But I think in the broader context of holding the CCP accountable and bringing down the CCP, absolutely we have to have a boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon. I'd like to ask the next question. Boris Johnson said he would be keen to agree a global treaty on pandemics to ensure proper transparency amid the US and the UK concern over the WHO's probe in Wuhan. What does such a move mean to you?
I think we have to get into more of the details. So number one, I think that we've allowed, look, it's your show and our show and others that really had the WHO reverse what they did. Remember, they went over there with a totally compromised group, including Americans that are the middlemen for the money from Tony Fauci to the Wuhan lab. We really haven't gotten answers on any of that. I think Boris Johnson, directionally is understanding the pressure. People want to know what the situation is. And now as the CCP, as the regime gets backed into a corner, they're going to come out with more and more ridiculous nonsense, like it came out of the United States or it came from frozen food. They're going to point in every direction except to that lab and their biological weapons program, right? And the gain of function experiments they were running. So I'm supportive of that. But to me, it's kind of a secondary thing to what we have in front of us right now. And we don't need to talk about other topics. The WHO was totally compromised. It's a subsidiary of the CCP. They went over and initially said it's unlikely it came from the Wuhan lab. It came from, animal to human transmission. It was the pressure of the whistleblower network movement, New Federal State of China, the diaspora, the Chinese people, Miles Guo, GTV, G News, Dr. Ming, your show, World Room, and others, that in 24 hours they reversed that and said, well, we haven't made a final decision yet. And then we found out the lie. The Chinese Communist Party has not given them any access to raw data. None. Zero. You can't make a conclusion until you get that. And it shows you the CCP is not going to give it up until you bring extraordinary pressure. I know I don't need to tell this audience this. They understand how the CCP operates. But I think more and more and more in the United States, people are awakening to the fact that the CCP has its own set of rules for itself. And so I think that we've got to bring this to a head about this investigation with the World Health Organization. And that starts with the raw data.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon. Next question from Dr. Stella. Stella, please. Stella.
Yes. So on the 11th February, the amendment to the Medicines and Medical Devices Bill of the UK took effect. Accordingly, organs and tissue that have been taken forcibly from people are barred from entering the UK. What signal does this bill send?
I think it's the first time. I mean, it's almost, if you think about it, shocking that even has to be in a bill. That, organs or tissues that were taken forcibly, even for us to have to put that into a piece of legislation, a statutory, which would become a law. It shows you how depraved the CCP is when you really step back and look at it. I mean, how could you possibly have a government that would forcibly take organs and tissue from living human beings, from Chinese people? This to me exemplifies the organ harvesting for money. To me exemplifies the inhumanity and brutality of the Chinese Communist Party to the Chinese people. The biggest victims of this entire fiasco are the Chinese people, whether it's the bioweapon that leaks out of Wuhan lab, whether it's the organ harvesting, whether it's the suppression of their voices. And it's disturbing to me that the world is not more outraged at. I'm glad the world is finally getting outraged about the Uyghur situation. It's completely unacceptable. But the Uyghur situation is only difference in degree, not in kind, right? Their suppression of the Chinese people is outrageous. I mean, every day I think about this when I get up and say my morning prayers is how can such a wonderful, great people like the Chinese people, and particularly a civilization that's arguably the oldest civilization continual on earth, passed down with this really great foundation of the family. How can they be enslaved? Why are there 250 million Chinese that have left their countries? All of you right now have left your homeland, have left where your grandparents and your great grandparents and your entire history have had to leave because you want freedom. You're not prepared to live under a dictatorship. And when you see something like that in a bill, you go, would we do this with Hitler? Didn't we just take it on? I mean, why does it have to be in a bill? It should be fully confronted. Their banks should be seized. We should have, they've as you know, they've sanctioned me as an individual. I can't go to China anymore. I can't go to Hong Kong anymore. I can't have any relationships with Chinese companies. And I wear that as a badge of honor. But they come and try to individually sanction you to hurt you financially and hurt you economically. We have to be doing that. So I think the bill's a start, but to me, it's how can that even come and be debated when you look at the core of it, and it's about a government that would actually do forced organ harvesting of Chinese people. So it just shows you to me the brutality, the inhumanity, and why we need to boycott the 2022 Olympics.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon. Next, Mike, please, Mike.
Hello, Mr. Bannon. Thank you, Dr. Ming. So my question is, the Global Times, the CCP Propaganda accused a 58-nation initiative to stop arbitrary detentions of foreign nationals or hostage diplomacy as an aggressive and ill-considered attack designed to provoke China, the CCP. Although this initiative didn't mention CCP, but they think they're provoked. If necessary, how would you like to respond?
I think this is good news for us. Number one, I think that because of your great efforts and other people, the CCP understands, and they're running dogs of the Global Times. They look for everything that's done in the West now is a confrontation with them. That's how they view it. And I think that's good. We have them very paranoid and very nervous. They should understand there's going to be a lot more things like this. I think that they're overplaying this as far as what it's really meant to be able to target them. I would like to have it targeted more. I mean, one of the balances we have to do in the West, as you guys know, we're pro-Chinese. We're pro-Lao Beijing. We're pro-Chinese civilization, Chinese culture. We're pro the nation of China. We love the Chinese. But you have to do that fine line between people who have unfortunately been co-opted by the system of the CCP and are really their assets or their agents, and how you deal with that. How you deal with that in the West, right? And so they're always looking for something to be able to say racist, nativist, xenophobe, to accuse the people that stand up to them of having all these bad intents. And you've really got to be very careful as you craft these laws, etc. And so I think you'll see a lot more of this going forward. The Global Times, and to me, that's a good thing. The more the Global Times is crying and whining about everything out there being an attack on them, they understand that we're coming for them. I mean, it's not, look, they sanctioned me, they sanctioned Pompeo, Navarro, Pottinger, others. They're playing hardball. I don't need to tell the Chinese people, and particularly the people who have left China, how hardball they play and how many agents and how many assets, human agents they have everywhere in the world, from London to Western Europe to Africa, Latin America, the United States. So it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Next,
thank you,
Carson.
Mr. Bannon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. Carson, would you like to ask a question? Thank you.
Yes, and as we know, Bitcoin has above $50,000 for the first time. So I have to ask this because the CCP is rolling out its sovereign cryptocurrency, and how will this move affect the world US dollar-based currency system, and what will the US government do on cryptocurrency area?
Boy, that is a fabulous question. I think first off, the U.S. government, we have to make sure that we manage our finances Well, the U.S. dollar is what they call the prime reserve currency. And to keep it the prime reserve currency, we have to make sure that we take care of our house, right? That we manage our business affairs and economic affairs appropriately, so it can be the source of transactions. And I don't think we've done that particularly well given the CCP virus. And the CCP virus has caused havoc in the United Kingdom and Western Europe. Yesterday it was announced, I think, the lowest car sales in January in 25 or 30 years in Europe. You're going to start seeing a major impact on the economies here. You've already seen it, but you just can't keep pumping out money as far as bridging deficits. And that's a situation we have ourselves in, because nobody will confront the Chinese Communist Party about their doing this and about their accountability for that. Crypto is a very interesting thing. I'm actually very aggressive about crypto, right? And Miles and I have talked about this a lot. I think crypto has a great future in it. I think Bitcoin you're seeing as a store of value. People are looking at Bitcoin. It's now gone from $2,500 or $5,000 to $50,000. And I think China is very focused on getting off the U.S. dollar. They don't want to be strangled by the U.S. dollar. They think the U.S. dollar constrains them, so they're looking at every alternative. I would just tell your audience this area of crypto is an area they should really look at very hard. It's definitely going to be a major source of currency and store of value going forward. And so that's why and I think the United States has been very slow. I tried to much more when I was in the White House, much more get people to focus on crypto, because I think it's very important. I think one of the resistance is the central banks, who I think have done a terrible job in the world economy. The central banks do not want that grip of power to go. The Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the ECB, European Central Bank, they don't want to let this go. So it's something to really stay in tune. And as you see the value of these things going up, they're only going to become more and more important.
Okay. Mr. Bannon, do you think the new WTO chief, who is endorsed by Biden, will be able to restore trust in the rule-based global trade regime?
No. I think until you stand up, she sounds like she's, I believe she's from Nigeria. She sounds like she's a very well qualified, and I'm sure very well intentioned. But the WTO's got more systematic problems than that. And the problem is like Geneva with the UN, really the operating units of the UN, which is not New York, they're really in Geneva, the World Health Organization and all the rest of them. They're essentially controlled by the CCP. The CCP is infiltrated, and they control these as subsidiaries. WTO is too slow moving. It's played patty cake with the Chinese Communist Party, as they have used. Remember, the reason I mock the post-war international rules-based system is that the Chinese Communist Party were smart. They understood the rules and they used it in their own favor. They didn't play by the rules. They changed the rules. So no, I think she's, although as well-intentioned and she seems to be highly qualified, I don't think her going in there is to change things. In fact, it may actually exacerbate situation, because Trump's not around. Remember, Trump didn't go to the World Trade Organization. He went right to the CCP, start putting on tariffs, start holding them account for all their violations and what they're doing to the world economy, and most importantly, what they're doing to the Chinese people, Lao Beijing. So no, I think it's a great question, but I think the WTO, until it reforms itself, principally about confronting the cheating and lying that the Chinese Communist Party has done, it's just a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Consul, would you like to ask another question, please?
Yes. This question is about Luckin Coffee with the accounting scandal one. And Luckin Coffee filed bankruptcy in the U.S.
Yeah.
What move should the Biden administration take for financial decoupling with the CCP?
Well, look, I've been for financial decoupling for a while. We shouldn't allow, and Luckin Coffee is just an example of total fraud. They just made up the numbers. And one of the reasons they can make up the numbers, we don't hold them to an accounting standard that other companies that list on exchanges here, they don't really have to follow anything what's called Sarbanes-Oxley, which is the set of rules we do for companies when they go public. And it was very tough given all the abuses you had in the internet crisis or the internet implosion back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. The CCP companies don't have to do this. And Luckin Coffee is just an example, because people can relate that to Starbucks, how, all the numbers were kind of made up, all the growth numbers. But that gets to a systemic problem of the CCP. And this gets back to the scientific data Dr. Meadling says. facts, scientific facts, data, evidence that you and Dr. Ming and all the great people that put this show together with your PhDs and doctorates understand about facts and how they're objective. They're not subjective. Well, that's not the CCP's mentality. The CCP, a fact is what they deem to be a fact. If they say it's a fact, then it's a fact. And you see this endemic in the system. That's why so many people of real promise leave China. That's why we've had this great diaspora of all this great talent, because people that are intelligent and smart don't want to live in that system. They'd rather come to the West, leaving their homeland, because at least there it's a system that rewards science and data and evidence. And CCP, it's whatever the CCP says it is, whether it's a financial record or whether it's what happened in Wuhan, the lab record. It's all the same thing. It comes from no belief in God, total materialism, that they're the most powerful thing on earth or in the universe. And what they say, they're like gods. They can just dictate this. And we see in financial markets and obviously in the virus, we see that's just not correct. It's a lie. And that's what they live as a lie. Yet Wall Street and the city of London and the global corporatists are comfortable with that. That's the tell. The thing is, the elites of the world and in Davos are comfortable kowtowing to Xi and, oh, you're wonderful, and give us another speech and tell us what the numbers are going to be. Whereas Lao Beijing and the deplorables and Gilets Jaunes in France are not comfortable with it, because they understand with their common sense and basic understanding of life to understand that's all a lie. That's a lie. And Luckin Coffee is just the financial and business aspect of the Wuhan lab. They all go back to the same thing, that everything is subjective to what the CCP says it is at that time. It's a great question. I apologize. I have to go now to get ready for the show, but I really love, why I love doing this show, Dr. Ming and everybody. The questions are the best questions I get all week from other mainstream media or people here in Washington, D.C. So your questions are just really amazing. The level of research and thinking through what's important. So Dr. Ming, it's always such an honor to come on here and be part of your show and talk to your audience.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Bannon. It's our honor to have you weekly. Okay, thank you so much. Have a nice day. See you soon.
Happy New Year, everybody. Great start to the year. Thank you.